the wedding was silent, not because it lacked grandeur. Far from it. The Hall of Union shimmered with iridescent crystal pillars, each glowing softly with the ancient energy of the Varelian people. Royal banners floated midair, shifting colors like living auroras, while dignitaries from across the galaxy watched in careful stillness. No, the silence came from something else. Tension, uncertainty, fear. At the center of it all stood Princess Liara of Varelia, and beside her, the man she had been forced to marry, a human. Liara didn't look at him. She kept her gaze fixed ahead, her posture perfect, her expression unreadable. Every instinct within her screamed that this was wrong. Humans were volatile, unpredictable, dangerous. Her people had spent centuries avoiding them, building defenses, crafting laws to keep them out, and now, she was bound to one. "Do you accept this union?" the High Arbiter asked, his voice echoing through the chamber. Liara hesitated, for just a moment, but it was enough. Enough for the whispers to ripple through the crowd, enough for her to feel the weight of every eye upon her. This wasn't a choice. This was a treaty, a fragile peace between two civilizations that had never truly trusted each other. She inhaled slowly. "I accept." The words felt like a betrayal. "Do you accept this union?" The Arbiter turned to the human. Liara braced herself. She expected arrogance, confidence, maybe even a hint of smug satisfaction. But when he spoke, his voice was calm, steady. "I do." She finally glanced at him, just for a second. His expression wasn't what she expected. There was no triumph, no dominance, only something quiet, something gentle. She looked away immediately. His name was Kale. That was all she knew. No military rank, no political title, no explanation for why he had been chosen for something so important. Just a name, and a presence that unsettled her in ways she couldn't explain. The first night was the worst. Liara stood at the far end of their shared chamber, arms crossed, every muscle tense. The room was vast, designed for royalty. Soft glowing walls, a panoramic view of the stars. A bed large enough for two but separated now by an invisible line neither dared cross. Kale remained near the entrance. He hadn't moved closer, hadn't spoken unnecessarily, hadn't even tried. "You don't have to stay," Liara said coldly. "It's my room too," he replied, not unkindly. She turned sharply. "Then understand this. This is not a real marriage. I know, no expectations, no assumptions. No." "I said I know." His tone wasn't defensive. It wasn't dismissive. It was understanding that irritated her more. Days passed, then weeks. And something strange began to happen. Kale didn't act like the human she had imagined. He didn't challenge her authority, didn't invade her space, didn't demand anything. Instead, he listened. When she spoke to advisors, he stayed silent. When she trained in the combat halls, he watched from a distance. When she walked through the palace gardens, he followed. Never too close, never too far, like a shadow that chose not to touch. One evening, she found him tending to a dying luminescent plant in the garden. Yara stopped. "You're doing it wrong," she said. Kale glanced up. "Probably. That species requires harmonic resonance, not water." He leaned back slightly. "Then why is it dying in a place built for perfection?" She hesitated. "Because no one pays attention to it." Kale nodded once. "Seems familiar." She frowned. "What does that mean?" "Nothing," he said, returning to the plant. But something about the way he said it lingered. Later that night, Liara couldn't sleep. Her mind replayed small moments. The way he spoke. The way he listened. The way he never forced anything. It didn't make sense. Humans weren't like that, were they? The attack came without warning. A rogue faction, unknown origin, breached Varelia's outer defenses. Alarms blared across the palace. The sky above the capital erupted in flashes of energy as defense fleets scrambled to respond. Liara was already moving. "Mobilize the royal guard," she ordered. "Activate inner shields. Evacuate civilian sectors immediately." "Princess," a guard shouted. "They've penetrated the lower districts." Her heart tightened. Too fast. This wasn't random. this was targeted. Explosions shook the palace foundations. Smoke filled the air. Chaos spread, and in the middle of it all, Liara found herself separated from her guard, trapped in a collapsing corridor. The ceiling cracked. Debris fell. The exit was blocked. She drew her weapon, scanning for threats, but the real danger wasn't an enemy. It was time, or lack of it. Then, Liara. She turned Kale. "What are you doing here?" she demanded. "Saving you. I didn't ask for." The structure groaned violently. Kale didn't argue. He moved faster than she expected. He pulled her back just as part of the ceiling collapsed where she had been standing. Liara stared at him. That speed, that precision, it wasn't normal. "Stay behind me," he said. "I don't take orders from." Another explosion cut her off. The corridor began to collapse entirely. There was no time. Kale's eyes changed, not dramatically. Not in a way that screamed power, but enough. Enough for her to notice, a faint glow, a shift, something deeper. "What are you?" she whispered. He didn't answer. Instead, he did something impossible. He lifted a fallen beam, one that should have required multiple soldiers, and held it in place long enough for her to pass. Liara didn't argue this time. She moved fast. When they reached safety, the palace behind them partially collapsed. Silence fell, broken only by distant explosions. Liara turned to him slowly. "That wasn't human," Kale exhaled. "No. Then what are you?" He met her gaze. "Something your people would fear." The truth unfolded quickly after that. Kale wasn't just human. He was enhanced, genetically modified, engineered by a classified human program designed to create perfect protectors, stronger faster, more resilient, a weapon. But not one meant for destruction. "I was created to protect," he said quietly. Liara crossed her arms, trying to steady herself. "Then why hide it?" "Because people don't see protection when they look at me. They see a threat." "Yes." The battle outside began to turn. Varelian forces regained control. The attackers retreated, but inside Liara, something else shifted. "You could have told me," she said. "And you would have trusted me?" he asked gently. She didn't answer, because she didn't know. Days passed again, but everything felt different now. She watched him more closely. Not with fear, but with something else. Understanding. She noticed the small things. The way he helped injured civilians without being asked. The way he avoided recognition. The way he treated everyone, servant, soldier, royal, with the same quiet respect. "You risked your life for me," she said one evening. Kale shrugged lightly. "That's kind of my purpose." "No," she said softly. "That was a choice." He looked at her then, really looked. "And so is this," he said. "Why are you still here?" she asked. "The treaty requires it." "That's not what I mean." He hesitated then. "Because I want to be." Liara felt something tighten in her chest. Something unfamiliar. Something she had spent her whole life avoiding. "You're not what I thought," she admitted. "I get that a lot." She almost smiled. The fear didn't disappear overnight. It didn't vanish completely. But it changed. It softened, shifted into something she could face. Something she could understand. One night, as they stood together overlooking the stars, Liara spoke quietly. "I used to think humans were only capable of destruction." Kale said nothing. "I was wrong." She turned to him, not as a princess, not as a ruler, but as someone finally seeing clearly. "I feared you," she said. "I know." She stepped closer. "But your kindness, your patience, it changed something." Kale's voice was soft. "What?" Liara met his eyes. "My heart." For the first time since their union, there was no distance between them. No invisible line, no fear holding her back. The galaxy beyond Varelia was still uncertain, still filled with unknowns, still shaped by fear and history. But here, in this moment, something new had begun. Not because the fear was gone, but because kindness had proven stronger. And sometimes, that was enough to change everything.